All right. Welcome everybody to our joint meeting. This is a joint meeting between the Provo Municipal Council and the Orem City Council. It is 12:02 p.m. on Tuesday, September 10th, 2020. In accordance with Utah Code 52-4-2074, I have determined that conducting meetings of the Municipal Council with an anchor location, such as the Municipal Council chamber, presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present there. And these are the facts upon which I have made this determination. Utah has been in a declared state of emergency due to novel coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, since March 6, 2020, a disease outbreak which the World Health Organization has characterized as a pandemic. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention state that COVID-19 is easily spread from person to person between people who are in close contact with one another. The spread is through respiratory droplets when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks, and it may be spread by people who are non-symptomatic. Federal, state, and local authorities have recommended that individuals limit public gatherings, wear face masks, and follow social distancing guidelines. The Provo City Council has adopted a local mask requirement in indoor areas accessible to the public, including without limitation businesses and city buildings, where social distancing is not possible, reasonable, or prudent. As reported by the Utah Department of Health, reported COVID-19 cases as measured by the number of cases per 100,000 people in Provo continue to rise at a significantly higher rate than reported rates for the county and the state. Physical distancing measures will be difficult to set up and maintain in the Provo City Municipal Chamber. Therefore, for the next 30 days, all meetings of the Municipal Council will be conducted entirely via electronic means. Council meetings are broadcast live and available later on demand at youtube.com/Provo City Council. Agendas and support materials are available at agendas.provo.org. To make a public comment or to join a meeting via telephone, follow the instructions provided on public notices of each meeting. To send comments to the council or weigh in on current issues, visit opencityhall.provo.org or email the council at council@provo.org. I'll begin by doing a roll call, and I'll state the names of those who are joining us from Provo City. And then I'll call upon Mayor Brunts to introduce those who are joining us from Orem. We're very grateful to have this opportunity to meet with you. We haven't done it for quite a while, and it's good to be together. I'm George Handley. I'm the chair. I'm joined by Dave Harding, our vice chair, Dave Shipley, fellow council members Dave Shipley, Bill Fillmore, Shannon Ellsworth, Dave Sewell, and I believe that Travis, I do see him there. He was having some technical difficulties. And we're also joined by a number of our staff, our executive director, Cliff Strachan, and I see that the names bounce around. Isaac Paxman is deputy mayor joining us from the mayor's office. And I might be missing other staff, but we're joined by other staff from Provo who are supporting us in this meeting. Unless I missed anybody, I'll turn the time over to Mayor Brunst from Orem.
Sure, thank you, appreciate it. So we have Debbie LeRae, City Council member, Terry Peterson, I believe is coming or on board. City Council member Brent Sumner, City Council member Jeff Lamson, City Council member Dave Spencer, and Tom McDonald will not be joining us. We have Jamie Davidson, our city manager, and then Steve Downs from the city manager's office, Bryn Bybee from the city manager's office, Chris Shirkey, our public works director, Steve Cannon, and Ernesto. Anyone else, Steve, that you're aware of?
Jody Bates, our city recorder.
Okay, and Jody Bates. So I think that's about it from us.
Thank you. It would be preferable, of course, to be in person, but we're grateful to be able to meet together here in this format and to have a discussion. We'll begin with an opening prayer, which will be offered by Council Member Dave Sewell from Provo, and I'll take it after that. Go ahead, Dave.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be able to meet together as representatives of Orem and Provo in this joint meeting. We appreciate the opportunity to serve our respective citizens and appreciate the great communities that we both have and the many common interests that we have. We pray that thy spirit would be with us as we discuss items of mutual interest, that will have an increase of understanding of areas where we can cooperate and a good exchange of ideas that would benefit either or both of our cities. We offer this prayer in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Man, thank you. So let me just make a note that although this is a public meeting, only the presenters and those invited by the council may speak or ask questions unless otherwise invited by the chair. So please use the raise hand function to indicate that you would like to speak, and please wait to speak until called on by the council chair. Our agenda begins with an item which is a discussion regarding a study for a flood zone map update along Provo River. This will be presented by Jamie Huff, who is from the Utah Department of Emergency Management. And let's see, is Mr. Huff?
Oh, that is me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
It's okay. I provided my slides. I have a slide deck. I think it was provided to Elizabeth. If you guys have that available.
I don't have your slide deck, but Hannah.
Oh, or maybe Hannah. I'm sorry. It was probably
That's okay.
Hannah.
Yeah,
That I
it looks like
provided.
Hannah has
There we
it.
go. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I've been looking forward to providing some of this information to you. My name's Jamie Huff. I'm with the Utah Division of Emergency Management. I'm the Risk Map Program Manager there. And I basically perform flood studies around the state to help educate statewide about flood risks. And so property owners and local officials like yourselves can make informed decisions about mitigating those flood risks. So we do have an ongoing study that I feel right now we are ready to start socializing with the communities, although we've had a lot of effort and coordination with city staffs since 2011 really is when this project started. So wanted to kind of give you a status update. Do I have control of these slides, or if we want to go to next slide? I don't know. That would be great. And we'll talk a little bit about the history so you can get a sense of what's been going on since the study started. Then we are going to talk a little bit about the study itself and some of the changes that are going to be occurring, and what the next steps are that we have planned to work with the cities and you all as we start socializing this with the public. Even though I know this is a public meeting, very much more is forthcoming in the next couple of years. So we're in the long haul for this study, unfortunately, but it's coming, and we're here to support and help as we move forward. So, do I have control of this? I don't. You can control. I'm sorry, I'm trying to change the screen here. Oh, there we go. Oh, there goes. Sorry. Oh boy. Okay. So again, a little bit about the study background. Sorry, my mouse is being crazy. A little bit about the study background. What we are doing, this is, if you can see that red line boundary, this is the exact study area that we are updating. It's basically the Provo River from the mouth of the canyon all the way down to Utah Lake. We have a plan in place that we are implementing as we speak, and we're going to talk a little bit about an additional study that is going to ultimately tie in to this Provo River study, which is the Utah Lake analysis we have also been performing. And we're going to show you kind of a sneak peek of the initial results, but there's going to be more refinements. And then the outreach strategy that we have planned moving forward. So going back a little bit about the study history, this study was not really initiated in 2006, but as you know, some of your map panels have just been updated from a study that did start in 2006. And back then, it was basically just to, FEMA was in the process of taking paper map panels and making them digital. So at the time, the Utah county-wide study that was just completed this year was just initially going to be what's called a conversion of the paper maps into a digital format. In 2007, the city had requested that we incorporate, or that this study incorporate, a Provo River study that was being conducted by Bowen Collins, and so we changed the scope to also include the Provo River and a couple other rivers in mind as well. And then between 2007 and 2011, when we started looking at the study and looking at the information, a lot of the information unfortunately did not meet FEMA guidelines and specifications, which we map to in order to show it on a flood insurance rate map, which many of you may be familiar with. So we noticed that there was what's called an accredited levee, which is the Provo River levee system. And in order to show that on a FEMA map, it needs to be certified by a professional engineer. And at the time, it was not. And then, so that initial scope was changed in order to restudy the river in order to show what the actual risk is for not having a certified levee. So then, ever since 2011, they had been working on that study. And unfortunately, between 2011 and 2013, the study was placed on hold because FEMA was updating their levee mapping guidance, because some folks around the country, and this was the national guidance, said, well, some of our levees provide some level of protection. Having a non-accredited levee or non-certified levee may not be a fair assessment. So between 2011 and 2013, they revised their guidance. And in 2014 is really when this study started picking back up and gaining more steam and more momentum. So ever since 2014, we've been working on that analysis. And the study was funded based on that new guidance. So here's kind of a quick picture. So there are 3 communities, actually. Utah County is not here today, but we obviously, I am happy to present at any council meeting, any kind of leadership meeting. But there are 3 jurisdictions involved. However, the majority of the area is in Provo City. The current effective flood insurance rate map is from 1988, and it's still in paper format, which again, we're trying to make in a digital format so you guys can use in your GIS products and planning tools that you have already available to you. Right now on the 1988 map, it does show that levee providing protection from the 1% annual chance flood. But again, like mentioned, if the levees are not certified by a professional engineer, unfortunately, FEMA cannot show that on the map that way. We have to map what's called the residual risk behind those levees. So that includes the Provo River, the airport levees, as well as that Lakewood subdivision levee. Those have all been determined via many discussions that they are not certified. And this effort is not to certify the levee, it's to map the residual risk. And I want to point out that this does not mean that the levees are not maintained. That is not what we're saying. It just means that the documentation that's necessary in order to show them on these maps is just not available, and cannot be shown on FEMA's maps that way. So And then obviously keep in mind behind levees, even brand new and perfectly maintained levees have some residual risk. They can fail and they can overtop given, right conditions. So, obviously levees are made to hold back water from where it wants to go, and they can and do fail. Not to say this is going to happen now, but that's one of the reasons why we are updating this study. So it's not to say, again, that the city is not doing their job. That is not what this is saying. It's just the information and documentation is just not available for it to be shown that way. And I will talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But so in the study process right now, again, we started back in 2014. It's been a very long process, and our maps just take a very long time to create. We have updated the hydrology from the Provo River, and that analysis has been completed, and that significantly reduced the flows from the Provo River down into Utah Lake, which helped the analysis that we're providing, and that's good news. That's great news. So initially, the new draft map showed a lot of more people than 100 people moving from a low risk to a high risk flood zone. But right now, as of what the data is showing right now, it's approximately about 100 new structures are going to be moving into that high risk area behind the levee. So wanted to point out what that means. So that would mean that those new structures in the high risk area, if folks have a mortgage, there will be a flood insurance requirement once the maps go effective. And again, we have a lot of time until that happens, so we're kind of in a good place right now. So there will be a requirement. If they do not have a mortgage and they're in a high risk area, it's not required, but highly, highly recommended to purchase flood insurance. And wanted again to point out that there are some ways to save before these maps go effective, and we have a lot of outreach materials that we're going to be providing to the public on ways to save on flood insurance for your residents. So that's one key piece of information. The second piece is those areas in high risk are going to be ultimately having additional development requirements. So there are requirements for developing in a floodplain, in a special flood hazard area or high risk area. So that will also be a big change for some of these residents. And then also wanted to point out, the city has been extremely proactive. Public Works and Community Development have been excellent partners, and they are already, they've seen some of this draft information already and have already sought a grant from both FEMA and the Utah Division of Emergency Management to mitigate some of this risk and to see if some of these areas or some of these levee segments can be certified. So that is awesome news. I'm very happy and to see that and trying to support, city efforts, during that time as well. And we're providing data and information, and so kudos to Provo City on that for looking at that. And then wanted to point out that this study has not been developed in a vacuum. We notice and understand that there's potentially a lot of impacted people. So we have what's called a local levee partnership team that was formed back in 2016. That includes 40 members from various different agencies, obviously Provo City, Orem City, Utah County, and then we have Central Utah Water Conservancy District, Provo River Water Users, the Bureau of Reclamation. I have a list at the end of the slides, but we have a large team that has been meeting fairly regularly since 2016 is when it officially started. So like I said, we've had 12 meetings. And then that also helped us develop that plan that we have available for anyone to look at and see, how this is being done and the process moving forward. So this is a lot of words. I'm not going to go into everything, but these are all of the meetings and kind of key milestones that we've had since 2016. Again, a lot of great partnerships with the cities and county and state and federal agencies as well to help in this effort, with us being the lead for that effort. But wanted to again point out that we did reduce the Provo River flows based on information from that the city provided, Provo City, which I don't think we could have refined it as much as we have had without that information from Public Works and Community Development. So kudos again to them, because they've been a really key partner in this effort here. So that's great news, and we were able to reduce many structures in that draft flood risk area, which you may see in a minute. So another thing I wanted to point out is, again, the city's been very proactive in helping in this effort. And one of the things is the Utah Lake streamline was not originally scoped to be included in this study. However, obviously it makes sense that, the downstream portion of the Provo River, there's going to be some influence from Utah Lake. So city requested that Utah Lake also be restudied, which we are in the process of doing right now. And we've had several meetings since 2017, 2018, when this was originally requested. And then we had to seek buy-in from the rest of the cities surrounding the lake as well, because it will change possibly their designations as well. And we got that buy-in, and we started that effort, and we had a kickoff meeting last year, and are right now currently performing brand new hydrology. So all of the water going into the lake, how much is coming in, and kind of to halt some anxiety, the Utah Lake study is not to update the compromise level. We are not touching that at all. This is the 1% annual chance flood level, which is a higher level than the compromise level. So again, we're not touching that at all. So kind of put you at ease there. And we've been in lockstep with Central Utah Water Conservancy District, Provo River, Bureau of Reclamation on getting that information. So they've also have been excellent partners in this process. So basically the same team that's been working with the levees has been working with this. So, and there's no guarantee the floodplains will increase or decrease. So again, we're still kind of in data development stages right now. So I can't promise that they're going to increase and decrease, but they may change. And then we're updating that hydrology from the floodplains. So lots going on. This is what we call the LAMP plan. It's a levee analysis and mapping plan. Both Public Works and Community Development, as well as other cities, have a copy of this plan. If you would like a copy yourself, please go ahead and email me or talk to city staff, because again, they've been very great partners in this. So please feel free to take a look at what we're doing. And the moment you've all been waiting for. So here are the draft results we have to date. So wanted to point out most of the flood risk. So again, that red line is the boundary of the study that we are producing. I know you can probably not see it very well, but city, actually, Orem City has a copy of this. Heath Stevenson has been included in our discussions, the emergency manager. Utah County has a copy of this, as well as Public Works for Provo City and Community Development have a copy of this map. So if you want to see this in more detail, please feel free to either reach out to them or contact me. I'd be happy to help. But most of the changes are going to occur on the west side of I-15. But again, the data is continuing to be developed. We are waiting for a piece of information from Provo City. They've been in discussions with trying to find one more piece of information to refine this study a little bit more. And we also need to add the Utah Lake analysis to this study. So this area, that kind of west side of I-15, may likely change from this draft. So just wanted to let you know that this is likely going to change. It's a very draft, and so just wanted to keep that in mind as we kind of move forward. So what's all this mean? Give you a little bit of a timeline. We are still very, very early in the process. We are incorporating, again, more comments. Like I said, we're waiting on a piece of information from Public Works to see if we can refine it a little bit more. And then we are going to do a couple more reviews with FEMA to make sure that they meet their guidelines and mapping process. And then what we are going to do, we are for sure planning to do a public outreach and education on this map and process moving forward. So we're going to start concurrently starting to develop a team of staff to help us educate the public with this map. And then I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that kind of dark blue purplish line in the middle is we are going to tie in the Utah Lake analysis, and then we are going to put the next red kind of circle here. We are going to release it preliminary to the public, so public can comment and review and look at these on an official kind of preliminary FEMA map. And that's not even projected until probably late 2021. So again, we're still a ways out from the study becoming effective, but we'll have public comment periods. We'll have public open houses. Hopefully, we'll be able to be back and looking people in the face and being present at meetings rather than virtually. But we have plans to do that in the future. And then we likely may not see an effective map. We're probably looking towards the 2023 timeframe. So again, we're still very, very far out from an effective map of when this is going to happen. So please keep that in mind, but obviously we want to educate the public early on so they can have comments ready and see this information early. So next steps, like I mentioned, we have to finish the data development and send all of it to FEMA review. We have a couple more extra steps with them, which takes time. And we are going to tie in Utah Lake analysis. And then we're concurrently going to develop that public outreach strategy with some of your city staff. So we have a long way to go, and look forward to having those city staff and any of if you would like to be involved, I would be happy to help or happy to have you guys involved in the outreach process. One of the things I do want to mention is that last year in 2019, we did do a brief overview with some of the state and federal congressional representatives. So they should be aware of this. But again, it's been a year and, COVID has happened and a lot of things have happened in the last year. So they may have forgotten about this project, but it is moving forward, and we welcome any participation from anybody. So, yep, like I said, we have a lot of outreach strategy, a lot of great tools and resources at our fingertips that we plan on providing as we release the information to the public, and look forward to city staff helping. So want to give again a big thank you to our team members that we have here. I did invite, which I forgot to mention, a couple of them on this call today, a few more staff in our emergency management office, Kathy Holder, who's our state floodplain manager, and Holly Strand, who is a risk map planner. And AECOM is the study contractors, so they're contracted through me to help perform the study. So they're here today, and they're a wealth of knowledge and pretty much experts at performing these studies. So we have a very great team to give you the best information that we can. But again, shout out again to Public Works for sure, and Community Development. They have been excellent partners. I can't stress that enough. With Provo City and Heath and Orem City staff have been excellent to work with, as well as Utah County. So I couldn't have done this in a bubble, again, like I said. So we've had a lot of participation and a lot of conversations, a lot of data that have gone into this. So want to give a thank you to that. So last one is, oh, they're not showing up. Oh no. Anyways, that was supposed to be our contact list. I will send that out back out to Hannah, so we can. There's a list of about 8 people on there, so which is including myself and contact information. So with that, I know that was a ton of information, because 6 years worth of information in 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, please feel free, either ask them now or reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer anything.
Thank you so much, Ms. Huff. We do actually have a couple questions, so start with Mayor Brunst. Go ahead.
So Jamie, I don't necessarily have a question so much as I just want to emphasize the importance of the work that you're doing. I remember in 1983 when the Provo River flooded, particularly west of Geneva Road, and it overflooded the south levee. There are some nice homes along there, and the water came over the levee and flooded those homes. And I watched that damage occur, and it was pretty disheartening. So I think it's important that people know the risks they're taking, and also that they get flood insurance. I know with the earthquake in Magna back in March, right afterwards, a bunch of people tried to get earthquake insurance, and the insurance companies would not issue that insurance at that time. So it's important that these people along the river and in those floodplains get their flood insurance now, prior to a possible flood happening.
Right.
That's all I've got.
Thank you. Mr. Fillmore, go ahead.
I did have a couple of questions. One is I'm curious about the scope of the Utah Lake study or analysis. How broad is that? What's the focus?
So the focus right now is to update all of the hydrology inlets, so all of the rivers that are main tributaries to the lake, to update the hydrology, so all of the water going in, and then to what's called redelineate the flood, the 1% annual chance flood around the lake, based on that information. So
Okay.
it's, yeah. So I mean, we've already done the Provo River, so that's already done, but that includes American Fork, Spanish Fork, the dry creeks in up in the Alpine area. So it's really all the main tributaries. We are updating that hydrology and revising it, because that also is a very old study, and even finding information from that study was very difficult, and even for public works staff and stuff to reproduce. So
And so it sounds
so that
like
was-
this study is really fairly limited as far as the lake goes. I was more curious as to whether or not there was a more expansive study underway with respect to rejuvenation of the lake.
Oh, no. Yeah. So our studies just update the 1% annual chance flood risk.
Okay,
But we do try to take as many key data points as possible that may influence water, and when it comes in and where it comes in and where it moves to. So we try to, bridges, culverts, everything. We take that all into account.
Okay, thank you. My other question pertains to Deer Creek. I'm curious to what extent the FEMA map and overall flood planning takes into account the possible, though perhaps remote possibility of Deer Creek Dam rupturing and the impact that would have on all of us.
Yeah, so our maps do not show flood inundation due to a dam break. But the outflow of a flood event or releases are taken into account, but it's not a catastrophic event like a dam breach or a dam failure. In this case, we don't, there are separate dam inundation maps that are created, I believe, by DWR or sorry, DNR. That are developed, but that's a catastrophic event, and this would be just the 1% annual chance flood in any given year, based on hydrology or the changing weather systems, weather patterns, and how much water is coming into the system just on a daily basis is what this does. So it's not an inundation map. No. Yep.
All right. I did see an article in the paper a week or so ago that certain internal structural repairs are contemplated for the dam. And I wonder if you and our Provo counterparts are aware of that.
I was not aware, but yeah, Public Works might be. They may have some visibility on that since they've been talking to Central Utah Water and Bureau of Reclamation and stuff like that. So great comments.
So who would be the lead agency, state or federal, to talk to about the risks of a dam rupture, which, as you said, would be catastrophic?
Yeah, so the Bureau of Reclamation, Central Utah probably has a lot of information for you. I do know there is a dam. Oh, I know Kathy's on this call, and I know she's going to help me out, or could help me out. But I'm thinking of his name. Is there a dam manager with Department of Natural State Engineer's Office?
Dave Marble.
Dave Marble, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, yep.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Great questions.
I had a somewhat related question. I'm just curious to know whether the existence of two dams on the river, when you consider the floodplain, I'm assuming that the existence of the two dams, of course, as long as they're functioning, mitigates the overall potential for flooding to some degree, right? So that the levee and the floodplain area, I'm assuming, is quite a bit smaller than it would be. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so you are correct. So on your current maps right now, the 1988 maps, they don't reflect, at least Jordanelle, they don't reflect that information in it right now. We did through Public Works and our conversations with Central Utah Water Conservancy District and also the Bureau of Reclamation, we did receive both information for Jordanelle and Deer Creek to fold into the study. So our new study now does reflect that information, and that was partly why the hydrology or the flows on Provo River did reduce, was because of the existence of those two structures.
Got it.
So, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Any other questions? Well, we thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll look for the contact information when you send it, in case we have any follow-up questions or concerns.
Yep. Should I send that to Hannah again and she can send it out? I'm sorry, my slide didn't produce here. So
I think that's probably the best course. Yeah.
Okay, great. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation. And again, if you have any additional questions, this is not the last time you'll probably see me. So, but yeah, anytime I'd be happy to participate.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move on to our second item on our agenda, which is a discussion regarding COVID-19 policies and responses. I could just maybe start with a couple of introductory comments by way of background. I'm sure it's not news to anybody that Provo passed a mask ordinance not too long ago, since it's been in the news. As I think all of us understand, viruses don't respect city boundaries, and And so I think what concerns us concerns you, and vice versa. And we're curious to know a little bit about your efforts thus far, how you feel like they've worked. We're aware that you requiring masks in city buildings. I don't think we know a whole lot more about educational efforts you've engaged in and how you feel like those are going. So we'd like to hear more about that. And another issue that I think is of interest to all of us is the combined student population of UVU and BYU that affects both of our communities, and just what interactions you've had with UVU. For example, we have, we think, somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 UVU students who live in Provo. And so that, UVU's policies affect us as well as BYU's. And maybe just for one last final point of context is that I think you may be aware that if you've been following the numbers most recently, but Provo and Orem continue to be climbing at the same time that other areas of the state are declining. And we're becoming more and more a higher percentage of the total number of cases in the state. I noticed today, just in the last 24 hours, we had 147 new cases in Utah Valley, and by contrast, 66 cases in Salt Lake County. So the trends in other parts where it's, especially Salt Lake County, where it's been more concerning, seem to be moving in different directions at the moment. And obviously, with the opening of schools and two major universities with large student populations, we just thought it would be helpful to talk together and learn what you're doing and gather your insights and share our insights if they're of value to you. So I maybe going back to my, this is kind of an open discussion, but I thought I'd try to structure it that way. If we could just learn a little bit more about what efforts you've made and how you feel about how they're doing and whether or not you have ongoing concerns.
Sure. Well, appreciate your comments there. A couple of things we could talk about within Orem. We, as the Orem City Council and city management, have felt that we're not in favor of a citywide mandate on masks. With that being said, our churches are requiring masks. Our retail restaurants are requiring masks. All of our schools are requiring masks. Mass transit's requiring masks, and city government is requiring masks. So most of the places within our community where people gather are all requiring that masks be worn. And I have noticed that the population of Orem seems to be following that fairly well. And I see people wearing masks everywhere that I go. As on an educational effort, certainly we have websites on our website, on our Facebook, on editorials. We've encouraged all of our residents to wear masks. I put out a editorial in the city newsletter every month, and for the last 3 months have encouraged everyone within the city to wear a mask. We likewise try to follow our own advice and be a good example and wear masks everywhere we go. I think one thing to consider within the two cities, BYU is in Provo, and UVU, the largest university in the state of Utah, is in Orem. So as they have come back to school to start their fall semester, certainly I believe that conflux of students that are getting together, though they're required to wear masks, I believe that there are areas where maybe in their apartments or other gatherings they're not. And consequently, I believe that the COVID-19 virus has spiked up in there. But we encourage everyone in the city to wear a mask and have felt good about that. So,
thank you. Have you had conversations with President Jimenez, and are you getting updates from them about what they're seeing on campus or off campus, or any in terms of their tracking of cases and so on?
So I personally have had conversations with President Taminas a couple of times. I have not asked for any tracking information. They have not offered any, but certainly that's something that we could take a look at. So.
Any questions from either councils? Yes,
Debbie.
go ahead.
You like us probably receive a lot of emails. We get probably as many for a mandate as for masks, but we get a lot of against. I'm wondering, did you have a lot of public input and so you developed a mask mandate, or because you were a lot of student population, was that the impetus? Guess I'm trying to understand what was, or was it the rising numbers? Tell me what your line of thinking is. We've been a little hesitant to make it mandatory because we do have a lot of pushback the other way with, personal rights and all that kind of stuff. So tell me, what was the thinking? I know the mayor vetoed it. Can you kind of give me some history? We're hesitant to mandate it, even though we do recommend it. And so I guess I'd like to know the background is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I can take a stab at that, and if any council member wants to add to what I would say, I think as we grew closer to the fall semester, we grew more and more concerned about the fact that our the demographics of the city were going to change significantly. That we had been operating more or less for 6 months with a much reduced student population, and we knew that probably meant that something different had to happen, something a little more aggressive. And in consultation with specialists in public health at the university, we were made more aware, I guess, of the specific risks of the spread of the disease that are associated with college students. I wouldn't say this was merely a response to that particular situation. I think we had been noticing that trends in Utah County were not moving in the right direction. And even if we sort of decided that our problem was only students, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense to pick on them and not be seriously committed as we could be as a city to our own standards. But they do present a pretty significantly higher risk of the spread given their living circumstances, right? The shared bathrooms and kitchens of apartments and dorms, and then their high level of social interaction. We also know that they're resilient in general, much more resilient than other populations in the city, but the chances for the spread beyond the university committee seemed pretty high. And it was just, I guess, a concern that it seemed to us to be the safest way to ensure that that schools and businesses and churches could remain open if we had a higher level of compliance with mask wearing where it was needed and appropriate. But yeah, we've received hundreds and hundreds of emails. We actually got over 4,000 comments on our Open City Hall, our digital resource for self-selected reporting. So it wasn't a poll of any kind of scientific nature, but we received enormous amounts of feedback. And I think our rough sense was that the population was in the majority in support. But there were certainly lots of strong feelings on the other side, and as you know, it's potentially quite divisive. And we're trying now to work in close collaboration with the administration so that we can reduce the division as much as we can and unite around a positive campaign of compliance, so that we can get the levels of compliance that we need to really reduce the risk. From what we had researched, 80% or higher compliance is really what you need in order to have the greatest level of effectiveness of mask wearing and we didn't have a sense that we were there yet. And we did see evidence to suggest that ordinances of this kind can help. We recognize that our community has certain strong feelings on this issue that make this a bit of an experiment, but we felt like it was the right thing to do, and we were certainly not relishing the opportunity to be opposing our mayor, with whom we have a very positive and productive working relationship. And we know we're united on our concerns about the pandemic and about trying to reduce risks. We just had a difference of opinion about what was the most effective way forward. But I should say that was part of the reason why we thought this conversation and communication with Orem would be valuable, because we just know that, again, it's not a city alone issue, and certainly Provo and Orem share a lot of the same demographics in terms of student population and the risks associated there. So we thought it would be a good thing to have that conversation. We've developed a much better relationship over the past several months, actually. Over the last year, BYU has become a really wonderful working partner with the city. And as we led up to the fall semester during the pandemic, that communication has increased and has become even more helpful. So they're actually meeting with us once a week in a kind of what they call a weekly huddle. They have a community relations committee, and they meet with the mayor and Isaac and Wayne Parker and myself, and give us updates on things, and then we share that, of course, with the rest of the city leadership when we get that information. But that's been I think helpful, because we can see their cases and we know where some of their trouble spots are. We don't always know how to respond and what the best way forward is, and that's part of what we're trying to figure out. But it's good to have that communication. So I would definitely, if you haven't had that regular contact with UVU, I think that's been really helpful for us. I don't know if any other council member wants to add anything to what I've said. I don't know if that answers the question entirely, but yeah, go ahead, Mr. Harding.
Yeah, just I agree with your characterization of it. I think for a while before we really started moving down the mandate path, I think everyone was fully on board that masks were a key component of the community response that would slow the spread. But I think the council generally, it took a long time to really convince us that this was something that needed to happen, not because of questioning the effectiveness of masks, but just knowing that it would be controversial in the community, and it would stir up a lot of strong feelings. And we were hopeful that we could get there without a mandate. But I think two things happened. One, we saw the great lengths that our community partners were going to, particularly our public schools and the universities in our community, the great lengths that they were going to try to have in-person classes. And we felt like without a good broader community response, that regardless of how much effort they did, they were still at jeopardy, just because the transmission could take place in the community. And then the second is at looking at both the trends and the potential trend once these universities opened and brought people in from across the country and across the world. What was likely to happen, and just looking at the numbers, even just of the past few days, Utah County, the infection rate is about twice per capita. It's about twice what the state average is, And if you compare Provo to the rest of the county, so already the county is twice the rate of the rest of the state, and Provo is about twice the rate of the county. So we're about 4 times what's going on generally in Utah. So this is a hot spot, and we are very concerned because these rates compound as we have more people, more actively infected people out there. That this spread is more likely to continue to rise. So it is very concerning, and so we're hopeful that a mandate would just set the community expectations. So people, if they chose to not be safe when out in public, they would have to know that they're breaking the law, as well as defying all of the guidelines that just about every community partner and public health expert has asked us to follow.
Ms. Ellsworth.
Yeah, I would only add that one of my motivations for the mask mandate was protecting the economy. We knew that if BYU closed early for online classes, that it would have significant rippling effects throughout our city in terms of sales tax and jobs and rental units. So that's something that was very important for us to preserve, and I'm sure it's important for Orem as well. When I was going through this process, I contacted elected officials in Summit County and in Logan City, where they had created mask mandates, and they all said the same thing. It was pretty brutal leading up to the vote, and there were plenty of emails on both sides, phone calls from multiple directions with multiple concerns. But afterwards, the storm kind of dissipated, and it hasn't been the firestorm of emails that it was prior.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Is it Lorraine? I don't know how to pronounce
your name. Ms. Ray. My last question is enforcement. Are you enforcing it? How are you getting compliance? And if so, is there a monetary fine, or are you just trying to have public shame? Or how are you getting compliance?
Well, our ordinance has 2 fines listed as civil fines. So there's no criminalization of violation, and one is for individuals, one is for organizers of events that do not follow the guidelines. But our ordinance itself is actually silent on how enforcement happens. We thought we would leave that up to the administration to interpret and impose as they saw fit. And I know that, and I don't know if Isaac Paxman wants to weigh in on this, but I know they're sort of figuring that out as we speak, because it's not easy. But our sense was that at a minimum, if you pass the ordinance and you require the signage and you create an official expectation with at least enough teeth in it so that people will take it seriously, that in the vast majority of cases you will see an improvement in compliance without any citations at all. But we left the citations in there because obviously it seemed to us that it didn't make a lot of sense to pass something that we had zero intention of ever needing to use, right? But we would certainly hope and expect that it would not be overused, that it would become something that simply gives the city the opportunity to educate and encourage and to officially expect compliance in a more official way. I don't know, Isaac, if you want to weigh in on any of that.
I would just say it is tricky territory for sure. We're not aware of a jurisdiction, certainly not one in Utah, that's doing any sort of enforcement other than really gentle reminders and then have a nice day, even if you don't comply. So we're doing our best to read the ordinance, and our police are doing their best to try to help with it. We're still meeting regularly on it. We spent a lot of time as an administration on it, but I don't know that we have a fully formed enforcement policy we're ready to share yet, but our meetings are ongoing and just doing our best to navigate it.
Mayor, you had a question?
So I was just going to mention, in the city of Orem, we have felt like that if you were to mandate this and then put enforcement in there as part of the law, that it would really dissipate a lot of efforts of a lot of our police force to enforce this, and it would be basically pretty much unenforceable. So we've not felt good about mandating for that purpose. And I noticed also that the Provo police chief was not in favor of the mandate going forward for the same reason. You know, for my side, I'm concerned that when we pass a law that people know that we will enforce it. And, you know, I feel like that this is an area, as Isaac has said, that he's struggling with. It's not helpful, I don't think, to pass this law and not enforce it. And then I can see cases where people could abuse the enforcement process. And my biggest concern is that we are supporting our police and fire to do the job that they're called upon to do. And I feel like that this, if they were to go out and enforce every person that they saw not wearing a mask, it would really hurt our efforts for the police and fire to do their regular job. So,
no, I think those are very fair concerns, and we wrestled with those pretty extensively. I think the only thing I would say in response is that I think we all agreed that that was not actually what we would be asking or expecting the police to do. That is to be citing anybody or everybody that they saw, but rather use this as an opportunity again to post signage and to, as Isaac described, from what we had just talked to officials up in Salt Lake County, for example, that this had was even reported by Mayor Wilson to me that in many cases it had been a positive for the police because it increased sort of friendly educational contact with the public rather than something that was more punitive. So even though there is the background threat of punishment in the ordinance, you know, lots of other ordinances that we have in our code are up to the discretion and priorities of the police themselves to decide which areas they're going to give emphasis to. And we trusted that Chief Ferguson, despite his reservations, which we took very seriously, would be able to make his best judgment about where he was going to put his time and effort. Anyway, Mr. Harding, go ahead.
Excuse me, I just noticed 4 hours ago, Mayor Kafusi posted on her blog, in the last sentence of the opening paragraph is, "Now that it is law, I'm committed to upholding that law in good faith." And I think that's exactly what the council was hopeful for. As you said, the police cannot enforce every law all at the same time, and we have limited resources on that, and we have full confidence in their ability to prioritize and make choices about, you know, what affects the health and well-being and safety of the public the most. And so what she said there, I think it's exactly what the council was hoping for, that it'll be enforced in good faith, with a majority of it is education and encouragement.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. We're not asking you to do something that you don't want to do or anything. Although, if you want to join us, we would be thrilled to have a partner in doing something like this. But we understand that it's difficult terrain. I think our concern is that of all places in Utah right now that need to be focused and working together, it seems to me Provo Orem is one of the most important places in the state right now, and we thought it would be worthwhile to have this discussion in case anything from our experience is useful to you and vice versa. Mr. Sewell. Oops. I think you're muted.
I just wanted to display a graph that I just barely sent to Hannah, and was wondering if she could either show it or allow me to share my screen so I could show it to illustrate the comment that I wanted to make. Is Hannah the one?
Dave,
that,
I think Hannah was doing the screen, but her microphone was having some problems earlier. I
Oh.
just elevated you to a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen
Okay,
if you have that
let's see.
ready to
Share
go.
screen. And the trick with this is always selecting the right screen to share here. I hope I got it. Okay, can you see this graph?
Yeah.
Okay, let me explain what this is. So one of the concerns for me, or the reasons why I became interested in supporting a mask ordinance, whereas a month ago I would have never thought that I would be. But we were presented with evidence that mask ordinances have worked to increase compliance and have been successful in lowering spread of the disease. So now let me explain what this graph is. So this is per capita new cases, a trailing 7-day average, a comparison between Salt Lake County and Utah County. So up until the end of June, when Salt Lake County passed its mask mandate, Salt Lake County was considerably ahead of us in terms of number of new cases per day. Not too long after they passed their mandate, right around here, their cases started to decline. And this data is actually several days old. So the discrepancy between where those two lines are headed has grown since then, as Dave Harding mentioned. So we were presented with evidence that mandates do make a difference. And the closest comparison that I could find in our state, which would be Utah County and Salt Lake County, I see evidence that it's making a fairly dramatic difference in the direction that new cases are going. So anyway, that was a significant reason for me for supporting the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. Any other questions or concerns or thoughts that council members on either council would like to share? Well, we hope you understand we want to be partners in any way we can. We think this is like I say, a communal collaborative effort on all our part, and we appreciate all that you're doing. I recognize like I say, the difficult terrain. I would say, one thing that came out of a lot of the feedback we've received, and I don't want that we've had lots of really thoughtful responses on both sides of the issue. But one thing that did cause us, or maybe I'll just speak for myself, but I think my fellow council members feel similarly, caused a special concern was the level of misinformation and misunderstanding in the community about the pandemic itself, about the risks that it poses to our community, about the effectiveness of masks. I mean, there's some really important and difficult questions that you've raised, that we've discussed, about enforcement, about effectiveness of an ordinance, and so on. But there does seem to be a need in our community for greater education and better information and clearer answers to questions, because there's a lot of confusion and misinformation that's out there on the internet and so on. And I think to the degree that as cities we are unified in providing the best information possible to the community, I think that's all to our collective benefit, so that we can unify around the fighting this pandemic with the best that we can muster, and not be spending our time confused about whether or not we're actually facing an enemy that even exists. That's been one thing that I think has become really high on my own priority list, is just getting the best information out there about the risks associated with COVID-19. Well, any other questions or concerns? Any other issues that either council would like to bring up?
I do have a question for you. I know that there is a list of some items that some people had looked at. Question for me has to do with Google. So when Google originally signed up with Provo, it was on a 7-year contract, as I remember. And it seems like that 7 years is either up or close to up. I'm just curious how things are progressing with Google, and is that still an item, that contract?
Do you have any information about that, Isaac?
I don't. I know Wayne has been dealing with that, but I haven't been in the loop on his discussions with Google. You're right that it is. I believe it's approaching us. I don't think we've passed the 7-year mark, but that's certainly, I can ask Wayne to pass along some information to you on, or come, be at the next meeting to share more on that.
Sure, I'd be interested to hear on that. But as you know, 5G was mandated by the state legislature for cities to have to accept small cell technology on poles within the city. And within Orem, we have a company that is beginning to put up 5G on some of our poles. So I was just curious to see how that's playing out in Provo, and then also the 7-year time limit on Google.
Okay. I'll pass that along to Wayne.
Okay. Anybody else from Orem have a question at this point on any item?
All right. Any questions from the Provo City Council or administration? Well, we appreciate the opportunity to meet together, and we'll go ahead, Ms. Ellsworth. Go.
Yeah, I'm just curious if the Orem City Council is aware of some of our efforts to plan for the foothills, specifically around Provo Canyon, and if we're all coordinating to preserve recreation amenities in that area. Is that something that's already been addressed internally?
So we have not done anything as far as that goes. I am aware of some of the efforts that you're making. We have been approached by one of the developers that has been trying to develop land at the edge of the canyon, which I think refers to some of your efforts. And we felt like at the time that was not an area that we wanted to move forward with. We were requested to annex some of the land in at the edge of the canyon there, and we turned that down and did not move forward with that. We are aware of the issues of some of the neighbors there, and I know that's been an issue for many years, where it's come up and then died down and come up and died down. And anyway, so we support you in protecting your city, and that's really all we've got to say. But
Yeah, I'd be interested in one day if we can bring in multiple partners, the county, Orem City, Provo City, the Forest Service, and talk about long-range plans for the canyon, and make sure that our expectations and objectives are met for the next 3 or 4 decades for that area.
sure, and I think that would be helpful. That would be a good discussion to have for all communities.
Mr. Harding?
Thank you. I just wanted to say it's been a few months or whatever, so I'm already foggy on some of the details, but I just wanted to say that we did feel the support of Orem. We really appreciated the support, and I think it was just another good example of our good relationship, and hopefully you feel it reciprocal that we're supportive of your efforts as well. And
Sure.
So thank you.
You bet.
Ms. LeRae.
I just thought of something. Many of you know our fitness center has been under construction, and we just opened the pools portion of our fitness center. I believe it was Tuesday. So we have a new hot tub. We've new boiler system. So just if you know that has been open, and the rest of the fitness center will be ready next February. Also, our library hall, which is the addition to our library, is nearing completion. I think they're working on some interior and landscaping, and that will be, I believe in October, will be open. So we've made a lot of progress during COVID, and we welcome you guys to come and visit and see what we've done. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, since that just a couple of things have just happened this fall.
Thank you. Congratulations. Okay. Seeing no further questions, we again express our appreciation for your time today, and we would welcome the opportunity to meet again as time permits and as necessary to continue our collaborations with one another.
George, maybe I
yes.
could jump in for just a second. I just
Please.
like to say it's always good to meet with the Provo City Council. We love Provo City. We appreciate what you do for your city, and love the residents of the city, and appreciate the opportunity to collaborate together on various issues. So
Thank you. We feel the same. Yeah. Some of our closest friends live in Orem, right? And vice versa. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. If there is no objection, we will now adjourn by unanimous consent.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.